Well, thanks for joining us for this look at some of the best stories from KPBS News this week. I'm Maya Trabulsi, and coming up, rent control is on the ballot. Learn more about the arguments for and against California's Prop 33. And the Padres are making a run in the MLB postseason. Businesses in the Gaslamp tell us how the extra games are helping their bottom line. And UC San Diego rolls out a new requirement that students learn about climate change to earn a degree. And we start with San Diego's balancing act in addressing homelessness. The number of indoor shelter beds is shrinking. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen tells us why the city is looking to expand makeshift campgrounds to fill that void.
The campgrounds are located on 2 vacant lots in the back corners of Balboa Park. They currently have space for about 540 tents. Over the next few months, that number will grow to about 770. The City Council on Tuesday agreed to extend contracts with 2 nonprofits that operate the campgrounds. Council President Sean Ela Rivera admits they're not ideal.
And I think we could also recognize that for the folks who've opted into this program, it is better than the alternative that they were experiencing before. I don't like that's the best option in front of us, but it is the best option in front of us. And I do think that we should have some humility in hearing from those who have opted for that choice, that it is better to them than what they were experiencing earlier.
City staff say the campgrounds have been operating under budget over the past year and can handle the extra capacity without a big increase in spending. The sites offer transportation, bathrooms, meals, and case management. But only 6% of people who've stayed at the campgrounds have exited into permanent housing.
We are building more housing, including truly affordable housing that has been built in San Diego in decades. But as everybody can see, with all the cranes in the air, it takes time to get that housing built. And in the meantime, we can't leave people in encampments on the sidewalks.
Later this year, 2 downtown homeless shelters with more than 600 beds will close. The city is scrambling to find alternatives. For the time being, those alternatives will be outside. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
One reason people fall into homelessness is the rising cost of housing. Next month, California voters will decide whether to give cities and counties more power to limit rent increases. Katie Heisen looked into the support and opposition to the ballot measure.
California limits rent increases to 10% a year for tenants living in apartments built before 1995. But a law known as Costa-Hawkins prevents cities and counties from passing further rent control, like for newer buildings, single-family homes, or new tenants. The Justice for Renters Act, Proposition 33, would repeal that law, allowing cities and counties to control rents for any housing. Jose Lopez is a community organizer in San Diego. He supports Prop 33.
This matters a whole lot, especially for the thousands of Californians who are really one rent increase away from having to move out of their homes.
Typical monthly rent for a California apartment has risen about $500 over the last 7 years. In San Diego, it's more than $2,600. And homelessness is increasing, despite more being spent to address it. Lopez is advocating for families like his own.
We eventually became an organizer, and I couldn't believe that they actually would pay me to go and talk to people about the things that most people told me to just be quiet about.
He had been paying a little over $2,100 in monthly rent. After a leaky sink flooded their house, he says the landlord evicted them, remodeled, and raised the rent. He now pays almost $3,800 to live a couple blocks away.
Because I had to invite my brother to come in and live with us to help pay part of the rent. And then besides that, just, making sacrifices, like, cutting expenses.
Lopez and other supporters are up against a long list of local leaders who oppose Proposition 33, including San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria and the mayors of Carlsbad, Chula Vista, and Temecula, and Senator Tony Atkins. Apartment and realtor associations have donated more than $67 million to fight the measure. Lucinda Lilly recently served as president of the Southern California Rental Housing Association.
Our industry as a whole find it sad that it's us versus them. It's not the way we see it. We'd love to get together and work out solutions rather than just get hammered every time somebody comes up with an idea that says, you own rental housing, therefore you're really rich, therefore you're a bad person, therefore I'm going to screw you over.
She says rent increases are necessary to cover repairs, Most housing in the city of San Diego is more than 30 years old. She says California over-regulates rental housing already, and it's driving landlords out of the market. More rent control would make that worse, she says, and discourage developers from building new housing. Instead, she would like to see local governments offer more rental assistance.
A lot of times, it's a matter of my car broke down, I can't afford to pay my rent. I just need a short-term loan to get me through the next month, right?
A few years ago, researchers analyzed more than a dozen studies on the impacts of rent control. They found it does work to keep rent lower and increase housing stability for current tenants. They say there's not much evidence that it reduces new construction or housing quality, but it does tend to reduce the total number of rental units as owners take them off the market. Ricardo Flores leads a nonprofit that advocates for affordable housing. He says rent control isn't a perfect solution, but it's necessary.
You've got to stop the crisis and then think about where to go from here.
And he thinks it has to be done with changes to zoning.
We don't really have the luxury to say, well, let's do one or let's do the other. People continue to have to make decisions about food, medicine, or rent.
Single-family-only zoning takes up more than 80% of San Diego's residential land. Flores argues that has to change for enough affordable housing to be built. San Diego has a housing crisis, but he says it's a solvable one.
This is not putting a man on Mars or a woman on Mars.
Katie Hyson, KPBS News.
Well, the countdown is on. We're in the final weeks of the election cycle. Thursday night, KPBS hosted a debate with the candidates for San Diego mayor. Larry Turner and Todd Gloria talked about homelessness, public safety, and other issues that will drive the decisions made by voters. Gloria is running for a second term as San Diego mayor. Turner is a San Diego police officer and U.S. Marine veteran. The hour-long debate is now available to stream on the KPBS YouTube page. The debate moderators are part of the new Public Matters collaboration with KPBS, iNewsSource, and Voice of San Diego. All three news organizations are working together to cover not just the election, but the larger issues that are affecting our democracy. And it's all at kpbs.org/Public Matters. Well, this weekend, the Padres are in LA to take on the Dodgers in the National League Division Series. Game 3 is scheduled for Tuesday at Petco Park. It'll be another busy night for businesses in the Gaslamp and the East Village. Alexander Nguyen tells us about the extra boost they're getting for the playoffs.
As Eric Tesmer and his staff were busy setting up the restaurant to open this morning, they were already anticipating a big crowd this afternoon. Bar Basic is steps away from the stadium.
We're so close, as they say, we can throw a baseball into the stadium.
He says his pizza restaurant business is dependent on how well the Padres do and how well their season goes.
There's a lot of other activities and concerts and conventions and stuff that help, but really our survival is based on how well the Padres do.
Last year, when the Padres failed to make the postseason, he saw a drop in sales. Many restaurants around the ballpark are huge supporters of the Padres, as evidenced by all the flags and signage.
Being downtown San Diego, Gaslamp is driven by the convention center, but the Padres are that wild card, literally. So when the Padres do well, the streets get flooded.
Josh Smith is the general manager at Water Grill San Diego. He says reservations have increased dramatically for the wild card series.
Last year we missed the playoffs, so unfortunately, but 2 years ago it was awesome down here. So that energy is back, so I think the team is going to go a long way.
That's how a lot of Padres fans feel too.
Padres! That's where we go with the Padres.
Johnny Fraschetti flew in from Texas just for the game. He's a diehard Padres fan.
I have loved the Padres since I was a kid, born and raised in Encinitas. I stay up every night in Austin, way too late, watching this team. It's the most exciting it's ever been.
And he thanks his very understanding wife for letting him go to Game 1 of the Wild Card Series tonight.
I have 3 young kids, and I'm here because of her, and she's watching them, but I get to go to the game, and I couldn't be more stoked.
Fans aren't the only ones stoked. Business owners are too.
We have been here for 20 years, and to watch the Padres grow and grow and grow, and to be able to make it to the playoffs with a great team that looks like they can go all the way is awesome for us.
Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
The trolley's Green Line takes fans to Petco Park. It used to start in Santee, but a change this week brought a brand new line into the system. Katie Anastas says MTS hopes it will make East County trips faster and more reliable.
3, 2, 1.
The Copper Line will serve 4 stations from El Cajon to Santee. It replaces the Green and Orange Line service north of the El Cajon Transit Center. The change requires passengers to transfer to the Copper Line, but officials say it will help prevent delays across the entire trolley network. That's because currently Green and Orange Line trolleys have to wait for access to a single track.
When you had 2 trains here at the El Cajon Transit Center wanting to go up towards Santee, they ended up having to wait for each other on that single track. Because of that, some of those trains got delayed, and that delay rippled all the way down to downtown and elsewhere on the system.
Starting Sunday, the Green and Orange lines will end at the El Cajon Transit Center. For riders continuing north, MTS says the Copper Line will run every 15 minutes for most of the day.
What we've done right here is going to improve reliability and dependability for every rider across the system in San Diego County, and that's one way that we are going to encourage more people to take transit and improve ridership system-wide.
East County leaders hope increased ridership leads to more economic activity in the area and less car traffic. They say nearly 5,000 people use the El Cajon Transit Center each day.
It's important to also point out that MTS will save $1 million a year in operating costs that can be used to increase frequency and better security, and hopefully in East County.
MTS says putting the 3rd track at the El Cajon Transit Center cost about $14 million. About half of it was covered by state grant money. Copper Line service starts Sunday at 5 a.m. Katie Anastas, KPBS News.
Sign up for our newsletters to get a list of our most popular stories. Here are some from this week. A wandering officer case highlights the struggle to hold police accountable. As homeless shelter capacity shrinks, San Diego will expand Balboa Park campgrounds. And 5 moments that stood out in the KPBS mayoral debate. Well, these days you can hack into a lot of things, including someone else's bicycle. In the era of wireless electronic shifting, it could happen. But KPBS SciTech reporter Thomas Fudge spoke with a computer scientist who found a way to prevent it.
Erlins Fernandez is a computer science professor at UC San Diego. He's also a cycling geek. He commutes to work on his bike and he rides for recreation.
I don't race myself at all. I mostly get into it because it's an incredibly calming experience.
He also follows professional cycling, though he knows it has a problem.
The problem with professional cycling is the corruption and the cheating. Performance-enhancing drugs have been a problem for decades, and that's not the only way you could cheat.
Here's another, hacking into somebody's wireless shifter.
You press a button on your shifters, for example, right here, you press a button right here, and then that sends a wireless signal to the gear shifter down here, and that changes the position of the chain on the gears.
All you need to hack into a shifter is an off-the-shelf device which can capture a wireless signal and send a malicious command. Fernandez and a partner tested it on a local hill. They set up the device on the side of the road and shifted his bike, the red one, into a higher gear, forcing him to slow down. In a full-on race, this can be dangerous, and yes, it's another way to cheat.
The leader of the Tour de France is going up a big mountain, and he's going to be in an easy gear because he has to climb the mountain. And so then if we can shift it from an easy to a hard gear, that's going to significantly slow him down and make him lose time.
The solution?
So the standard solution is to basically share a secret number between the shifter and the derailleur that only these two devices know.
They approached the bike company Shimano with their plan.
And so the assumption is that the attacker, someone external to the system, cannot predict what these numbers are. And that is essentially what we recommended to Shimano as a solution, as a mitigation. And that's kind of what they ended up integrating into the system.
Fernandez didn't win any royalties from Shimano, but he knows he brought a bit more integrity to a sport that he cares about. Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
And we'll stay at UC San Diego for this next story. Learning about climate change is a new graduation requirement. KPBS reporter Katie Anastas says it's the first school in the UC system to implement the policy.
UC San Diego leaders say hope for addressing climate change lies in their students.
So I think if you care about yourself and others, then you should care about the science concerning this earth and where we are right now.
Freshman Mutale Malama is in a class called The Oceans. It covers everything from ocean chemistry to marine biology. Professor Sarah Gilly says they doubled the size of the class this fall to help students meet the climate change requirement.
Well, I think the really exciting thing about teaching a course like SIO 30, The Oceans, is that it's reaching students at a point when they're still discovering who they are.
Gilly was part of the group that developed the requirement, but not all of them were scientists like her.
The people on the committee were from every possible discipline. And I think the most vocal and powerful people were not necessarily climate scientists. They were people from arts and humanities, from literature, from social science. They really understand that climate change is not simply a scientific problem. It's a scientific fact, but it is actually a social problem, it's a political problem, it's a cultural problem.
The committee considered requiring all students to take the same class. Instead, they wanted to show that climate change is connected to all fields of study.
We don't want a whole class to say, things are bad, see you later. I think that's what we've done to this generation, right? We've left this generation in kind of a bad place. And instead, the faculty realize that what we want is to give this generation and the next generation all the tools to combat climate change.
There are more than 40 classes that meet the requirement. Scripps Institution of Oceanography offers several of them. Others are in departments like urban planning, anthropology, and economics. Katie Anastas, KPBS News.
Day of the Dead is a beloved tradition devoted to celebrating death, life, and memories of loved ones that we've lost. South Bay engagement producer Maria Elena Castellanos says KPBS's digital community, Ofrenda, is back this year and shares details on how to participate.
Dia de Muertos, or Day of the Dead, is a celebration of life and death. The Aztecs and the Toltecs believed mourning the dead was disrespectful. They viewed death as a natural phase of life. So, they continued to see the dead as members of the community, alive in memory and spirit. In Mexico and other Central American countries, it is believed that during Day of the Dead, departed loved ones return to the earth to visit us and enjoy the altars we built for them on this day. At KPBS, we're getting ready to celebrate this tradition, and we want to give you a space to remember and celebrate your loved ones. For the second consecutive year, KPBS is organizing a digital community altar where you can share a memory of someone you wish to remember this upcoming Day of the Dead. Go to kpbs.org/Day of the Dead to fill out our form. You can share an audio clip, a video, text, and a photo. You can also call 619-630-8516 and leave a voice or text message. The deadline to send your ofrenda is October 23rd. Maria Elena Castellanos, KPBS News.
Here in San Diego, life-saving medicines like naloxone have helped reduce the number of fentanyl overdoses. But Mexico's restrictive drug policies make naloxone almost impossible to get in Tijuana. KPBS border reporter Gustavo Solis says Good Samaritans are essentially smuggling this medicine into Mexico.
¿Vas a querer también aluminio o...?
Carmina Ruiz runs the needle exchange program at Tijuana's Breve en Casa. This is the city's only needle exchange and safe use clinic. Regulars here toss their used needles in a little red box, while Ruiz gives them clean ones, all to prevent the spread of diseases like HIV and hepatitis. In the back of the clinic, women use drugs in a safe environment. They sit on a couch, listen to music, and even create art, all under the supervision of staff trained to prevent overdoses. But there's something missing. The medicine used to prevent overdoses is almost impossible to get in Tijuana. Naloxone is an overdose reversal drug that has been a lifesaver for fentanyl users across the globe.
I think everybody on the planet should be carrying it now because this is a major problem in many countries.
That is Gretchen Burns Bergman, founder of A New Path. The San Diego-based nonprofit has helped make naloxone more available throughout the county. Known by its brand name Narcan, the treatment is available in local schools and even vending machines throughout the region. She says that these achievements have not come without pushback. Some feel that providing medicines like this encourage illegal drug use.
If we think stigma's bad here, it's even worse in Mexico.
Former Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has spent years downplaying Mexico's role in the fentanyl crisis, saying that his country does not produce or consume the synthetic opioid. He's also blocked efforts to make naloxone more accessible in Mexico.
The Mexican president said that naloxone prolongs the agony of people who use drugs. Basically, he's saying, like, well, they're beyond saving, they should die.
Jaime Arredondo is a drug abuse expert who has spent years visiting drug treatment centers throughout the border. He says López Obrador cut federal funding to nonprofits like Preven Casa in 2018.
Ever since 2018, we had to cross all the supplies, either syringes, pipes, naloxone, foil, everything that we use for harm reduction, we had to bring it either from the United States or from Canada.
That's right. People are smuggling naloxone from the U.S. into Mexico, and sometimes at great personal risk.
I have myself been found once crossing with 300 vials of naloxone, and they wanted me to pay $8,000. Luckily, well, I didn't have the money, or they will gotta impound my car.
Arredondo says members of the National Guard and the Mexican military have been known to confiscate naloxone. The shortage has gotten so bad that local paramedics and police officers are asking Preven Casa to supply them with the medicine.
I have heard from them like, oh, what is the medication to treat them? And can I have some so I can treat more persons like you did today?
Dr. Alejandro Gonzalez has even trained first responders in how to administer naloxone.
They don't have access to naloxone. They have seen a lot of overdose, and they can only offer oxygen, and that's it. And it's a good way to treat it, oxygen, but it's not enough.
Arredondo says more binational collaboration is needed.
This is like a North American problem, right? It's not just Mexico, it's just not the United States, it's Canada, US, and Mexico, and we need to find common solutions for the three countries for a common problem.
He points to people like Maria Heréndira as a sign of hope. She used heroin and later fentanyl for more than 25 years before getting sober at the clinic.
Perdí muchos años de mi vida, 25 años, usando heroína.
Heréndira says she felt safe using drugs in the clinic, with people ready to help in case she ever passed out, which she says she did a few times.
Aquí había alguien que me cuidara, pero de todas maneras, 2-3 veces sí me les pasé.
Now that she's sober, Heréndira still comes to the clinic. Sometimes just to hang out, but mostly to volunteer. She likes to clean the same room where she once got high. She thinks of it as a good way to give back to the people who have helped her so much. Gustavo Solis, KPBS News.
And Gustavo Solis has been covering the cross-border fentanyl issue extensively in recent weeks. You can find this story and more of our feature reporting on YouTube. It's also where we live stream KPBS Evening Edition weeknights at 5. Subscribe and get notified when new content is posted. Governor Gavin Newsom's recent ban on hemp products that contain THC is raising concerns among medicinal users. KPBS health reporter Heidi DeMarco says some hemp advocates warn it will especially affect vulnerable individuals, including some children.
10-year-old Sadie Bone has spent countless nights in the hospital. She has a brain disorder called Rett syndrome. She struggles with seizures, insomnia, and anxiety. Sadie's mother has been giving her a cannabidiol, or CBD tincture, recommended by her doctor for almost 3 years. CBD is derived from hemp plants. The tincture also contains trace amounts of THC. That's the compound from cannabis plants that gives pot its high.
And just a few weeks ago, we celebrated her 1-year seizure-free anniversary. And it was a remarkable milestone for her and for us. It allowed her to feel less afraid to leave the house, to go to school.
But Bone worries her daughter's health may now be at risk. In September, the state banned all hemp products containing any THC. It can no longer be sold legally in California stores or purchased online from other states. Adults over 21 can still buy it at medical cannabis dispensaries.
These are very specific types and brands and doses, and you cannot vary, especially when you're talking about a pediatric population.
Governor Gavin Newsom initiated the ban because he says loopholes in the law have made it too easy for kids to access intoxicating products. UC San Diego researcher Natasha Wade studies children who use CBD for health purposes, including 700 in San Diego County.
So even if the parents thought that they were giving just a pure CBD product to their kids, and that's all that those kids had ever used, 23% were still positive for THC.
Wade says her findings highlight the need for regulation of CBD. She says more research needs to be done to confirm hemp and THC do what sellers claim.
The data has not panned out that it does all of those things, and we also have not had the ability to do the research we need to see what it can actually effectively treat.
But for Bone and her family, CBD has been life-changing. She stockpiled tinctures when Newsom proposed the regulation.
I mean, our life has almost restarted, and we can be, go on family adventures and not feel this kind of sense of panic. And that's because of CBD. So
the ban will last until March 2025. Heidi DeMarco, KPBS News.
And before we go, we want to let you know about a big part of our election coverage that launches on Monday. The KPBS Voter Hub will be available in both English and in Spanish. You can look for a link on our homepage at kpbs.org. There will be information on voting locations, election explainers, and you're also going to get a lot more of our coverage. And again, the KPBS Voter Hub launches this Monday at kpbs.org. And we hope that you enjoyed this look at KPBS News this week. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Thanks for joining us.